James.
Ref.
It is 100% the silly season.
Yeah.
No, well, sorry. It's 95% the silly season. This week is still going to be the sensible silly season.
Yeah, we're still bringing you real analysis. We're talking about things that are kind of actually happening in the world, and our sort of take on events has some grounding in reality.
Next week, I think, is going to be silly season proper.
Yeah,
onwards.
Yeah, and you won't see any more careful analysis,
but you won't need it
until probably March 15th. When we really do get back to business.
Yeah, April 1st maybe.
For many people, that's a silly day. For us, that is
absolutely not.
That's when the smart and serious season resumes.
Mm-hmm.
That's just another reason why we are built different here at Downround. We're back to the world of AI a little bit today. Well, actually quite a lot. You know, every time we try to get out, they just drag us back in.
Yep,
Isn't that the case? By now, you would have realized that the only thing that's happening in the world of technology that's new and fresh and happening is AI related.
Yes.
You know, but it is kind of interesting. I know you've heard a lot from us about, you know, OpenAI power struggles. You've heard about foundation models. You've heard about LLMs.
You've heard about EAC. You heard about accelerating into the AI future. You've heard about decelerating. You've heard about effective altruism that involves. Actually, let's talk about effective altruism for a second, because one thing I think we didn't make clear. What we're going to talk about today is Google. And
we're talking about Google today.
Google and Google's AI, their announcements on AI, where Google are at, is it going to ruin their core business, etc. But one thing we didn't talk about with effective altruism, I realized, is it's now just part and parcel. Like, effective altruism is a kind of just like an anti-AI movement. The way they landed there, though, was because, as you said, like, effective altruism started as how can we use money to be as effective as possible, like to benefit as many people as possible. And it was things like mosquito nets, which mosquito nets stop malaria. It will save as many people's lives as possible. It started there, but then somehow got co-opted into, but if AI is going to kill everyone in 1,000 years...
The mosquito nets don't matter.
Because, mosquitoes kill, 50 million people a year.
Imagine if you were living in sub-Saharan Africa and you had a mosquito net and you were saved from malaria, but then a computer killed you.
Well,
what's the point?
But like literally their ideal is like, but think about it. How many humans will be alive in 100 years? And then how many potential humans could have been alive were humanity not wiped out by AI? So therefore, by being like anti-AI or whatever, we're saving 1 trillion lives. Like we're saving the population by a factor of however much the population will grow until, universe heat death.
Yeah, it's very silly, to be honest. Because even if it's something that you're relatively concerned about, and don't get me wrong, I think it's like if you are concerned about the disrupting effects of AI, I think that's a completely rational thing to think about. But if it's the only thing you think about because you've like trapped yourself in some weird philosophical
that's what's happened, right?
Problem, and all of a sudden that's the only thing that's going on. I also think it may be partially due to the fact, I don't think this is entirely the reason, but it was so tied up with like the Sam Bankman-Fried stuff that like it's just gone off the planet. And that's just,
It's in chaos. It's a movement in chaos. Let's be perfectly honest.
Yeah. But anyway, to the sort of like the core part of this episode, we haven't talked about Google in a little while. And it's good to kind of get back to them. A, because they have announced a bunch of AI stuff. They announced it last week, which kind of puts them back on the map in terms of AI. We'll get into that. But B, they are sort of like, they're one of the most important players in the sense that they are the ones who are sort of most vulnerable to AI disruption.
Yeah, very interesting on either side of it because A, they invented transformer models. People who worked at Google invented the technology behind the big leaps.
They've been AI leading lights forever.
They are so deeply invested in AI, but also they seem to have a business model that is highly susceptible to AI disruption, being Google search. If you can ask your personal assistant or your AI the answer to something, why would you go to Google? Therefore, why would you see any ads from Google?
Yeah.
Therefore, bottom line, blah, 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 blah.
We've talked about this. I think the last time we did a fully Google dedicated episode is we were talking about the fact that Google are sort of like habitually in the habit of just like abandoning products. So, they start something that's kind of cool. It doesn't get like the 100 million billion user scale they look for, so they just axe it. It's worth remembering for this entire conversation that Google search is, if you were thinking about the top 5 business units or businesses ever created in human history in terms of like value generated for the company that made it, Google search would absolutely be in contention.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely be in contention.
Said it before on Down Round. What a genius idea. By being good at algorithms, you provide consumers with a benefit of connecting them with the information they're seeking, but also know absolutely every query and question and thing that person is doing and put ads against it. Genius.
No, totally. Like, think about the innovation on the advertising level of we can advertise not just to like some vague demographic that we're looking for, but we can advertise to a person who is looking for a certain thing at a given time.
Yeah.
We sell beach umbrellas and after like an insane amount of market research and development, we've figured out that beach umbrellas are really popular with women aged 30 to 44 who live in these metro areas and these phases.
So therefore we have to advertise in the real estate section of the Sydney Morning Herald.
Yeah. We've figured out a way to advertise beach umbrellas to people who are in this very moment searching for a beach umbrella to purchase. Incredible advertising innovation, and it turned Google into and Alphabet, which is now their parent company, into one of the largest companies in human history.
Yeah,
purely on that basis. Everything else that Google does, whether it be Google Maps or Gmail, or any of the other services they provide, any of like their business Google tooling, flows from the fact that they are printing money.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to know, like, does Gmail actually make any money? I doubt it. I know you get split up into, like, Google Workspace or whatever the fuck that's called now, Google Suite, I think, or Google Suite for Business. Obviously, it's changed names 100 times, like everything in Google except for Gmail and Google itself. Gmail, they put ads in now at the top. I don't know how effective they are. The amount of space those ads take up, to me, suggests that it probably doesn't justify whatever the cost is of hosting all of that free data. I know you have to pay a premium $2.99 a month or whatever for 100 gigs, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I doubt that offsets all of the free accounts.
Neither of us are Google accountants, but whether or not Google, like ads displayed on Gmail actually offset the absurd amount of cost. Because remember, Gmail gives you an insane amount of storage for every free account.
Yeah, gigs.
And that was their big selling point when Gmail first launched. It was like 1 gigabyte. You could have 1 gigabyte of storage, which back then was just like mind-blowing that they could offer you that when you were coming from Hotmail or Yahoo Mail. Whether or not it perfectly lines up, I think the amount of data they suck up from Gmail to then feed back into their regular advertising engine is probably worth it.
Yeah, as well as just like weird internet pipes stuff through SMPT and spam, and like they get shit through Gmail, obviously. I do get that, but it's not like a money printer.
No, probably not compared to like their core stuff. No, I totally agree with that. But anyway, they are the one company that has so evidently, from the moment the AI stuff started to happen via ChatGPT and OpenAI and everything else that's happening in that world, they are so evidently the one company that stands to lose the most. Because, as you said, if you're in a position where someone can ask ChatGPT or ask whatever, what's the tallest mountain in the world? And you can just ask a bot and get an answer and get a clear answer and get an answer very quickly. What is the point of having Google search to ask these sorts of questions?
Yeah. An interesting kind of sidetrack thing, which we didn't say we were going to talk about, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, is the Apple and Google stuff that came out. In that we've been saying this on Down Round for years. We've only been around a year and a half. But
Down Round has been in active production since 1997.
Yeah.
Maybe you came onto us in the past year, but we've been chugging along for a very long time.
If you're a long-term Downie, if you've been a Downie for 18 months minimum, you would know that, as we always have been saying, when Apple talk about their services revenue and talk about how cool that friggin' stupid soccer video is on Apple TV and like how so many people are signing up to Apple Fitness Plus, and hence why Apple is earning billions of dollars of services revenue. If you've been listening to Down Round, when you hear that services revenue figure, you know, A, the majority of it is gems on the App Store, and B, Google paying Apple to be the default search engine on iPhones and Apple devices. Now, that is because the biggest threat to Google was Apple starting their own search engine.
That would be the thing that would have kept people awake at night for a very long time.
For a very long time. And it was reported that like when Apple announced, like, released Spotlight for the first time, like drag down, be able to search on your iPhone, and it was showing like weather things. There was a like red light alert panic at Google because it's like Apple is implementing the framework for their own search engine. And if we lose all of that traffic from iPhones because Apple have their own one, we're fucked. Or at least we've lost a shitload. It's a huge competitor. So it is worth us giving Apple something like 30% is the number that came out of all of our advertising revenue that we generate off iPhones goes to Apple. Billions and billions and billions of dollars a year. Point being, that is Google's number one weakness, losing that.
Yep. There were complete panic stations about the idea of Apple starting a search engine. Keeping in mind that if Apple did decide to start a search engine, and they do have the bones of one that operates through Spotlight, as you mentioned, it probably wouldn't be that good. Like, this is not Apple's core competency.
Yeah.
Every service that they have, iCloud is to this day not amazing. iCloud is not as good as like Google's suite of like calendar.
It's quite confusing.
It's a confusing thing. Like if Apple actually sat down and said, Google, see you later. We don't want your $16 billion a year of like extortion money. We're going to start our own search engine, and you can go to Apple search.apple.com and start putting in queries and whatever.
Yeah, but I think that, yes, but like Apple Maps was dog shit when it first came out. I know I've said this before, and slowly but surely it's gaining more and more market share because people just use it because of its integration within the system.
Yeah.
And it's like with Apple, with Spotlight, as I've said, like I search for my apps with Spotlight on both my laptop and on my phone. Like I pull down with my friggin' thumb and I type. And if I just got into the habit of doing my web searches like that, it'd be handy.
Yeah.
There's less friction.
I agree with that. Like they'll
get there.
They can get the low.
But they have no incentive to get it there because something like 40% of their top line profit is just Google giving them cash, because it doesn't cost Apple anything to make Google the default search engine, right?
No.
Like on iOS, it doesn't cost Apple anything.
No,
it's just a setting, and for that setting, they get tens of billions of dollars a year. So they have absolutely no incentive to go out and spend all that time and effort
for something that might not work. And because I agree that Apple Maps is a good example, but also, Apple Maps has been around for basically a decade at this point.
Yeah,
and it has gotten a lot better, and it has accumulated a certain like market share of, as I would describe, kind of like low effort users, who are people who are like, they unbox their shiny new iPhone and they're kind of like, I don't care, I just want a map, and they've gotten it. But Google Maps is still king, and like
Google Maps is better at like searching for generic like pubs in the area. But I use Apple Maps because it integrates with CarPlay better.
No, and that's another point. Like as long as you're in a city where the directions on like the Apple Map coverage is good, you no longer have that fear that it's going to direct me down a road that doesn't exist anymore, whatever. So if you're in like, major cities like Sydney, it's mostly fine. Not only is it fine, but it's actually like in many ways better than Google Maps. And Google Maps has like taken a lot of like the lane changing approach that Apple has had. Like Apple Maps will tell you go into the third lane from the left to whatever.
But also, honestly, it just, at least in my car, on CarPlay, it shows the directions on the dashboard in front of the driver's seat, whereas if you use Google, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because you're using Google within CarPlay.
As
in it's just better integrated into CarPlay.
Totally. Yeah. So they have that advantage as well. But as you say, if you're searching lunch near me, it's got to be Google every time.
Yeah, Google's going to be better. Although, you're also going to get ads. But point being, that's why like one of the number one competitors to and Apple aren't going there because, why would they? The goose is laying the golden egg. I mean, it's worth touching on for a minute because, like, if you then said to Apple 10 years ago, should you have started your own search engine? Like, I feel like strategically they should have.
Yeah, no, I think they missed the ball.
Because at some point, 10 years ago, Google said, hey, we'll give you $500 million to make us default. And this is another interesting thing about the whole court case where all this came out, that apparently Microsoft looked bad in this, well, I think so anyway. Microsoft came out and were like, we went to Apple to try and get a zinger on both of them. We went to Apple and said that we would pay more than Google would for Bing. And Apple would basically just but that would be a worse experience for our customers.
Yeah. I'm sure Bing was front of mind for Apple when they were thinking about, should we invest a vast amount of money into making a functional good search engine that's up to date and cutting edge.
Yeah.
And obviously, because that's the other thing, Apple is always progressively rolling out new features for its service stuff, right? Whereas Google, because it's their core product, they're militant about doing new algorithm rollouts, doing new feature ads to Google.
Yeah, make it 0.1 millisecond faster.
Apple's never been like that with any of its services. And I feel the moment you get into being a search engine, which is less than it was, but still kind of is the gateway to how people access the web, you need to be more militant than Apple has been historically with their software and services stuff.
But what I was going to say quickly to finish the point about the it's a sidetrack that, the Apple money to Google is that at some point 10 years ago or whatever, Google offered them probably less, $100 million to be the default.
Yep.
And every year that number grew.
It goes up, yeah.
And every year it's a disincentive for Apple to create their own search engine to the point where we get here where you're just we get 16 billion, 20 billion, whatever it is a year, free money from Google. Why on earth would we say no to that and start our own search engine, despite the fact that for consumers, it would be better if Apple had a search engine. If Apple had started work on a search engine 10 years ago, Google would not have an entire page and a half of ads every time you search for anything. Because it couldn't.
You're probably right. Yeah.
That's what capitalism's supposed to do. The rational markets.
Introduce a bit of competition. But the point of this episode is that Google have now reached a point incredibly suddenly. I'd be surprised if they hadn't seen this coming from the moment, GPT started from OpenAI started getting a bit of traction, even before ChatGPT stuff. They must have been thinking internally about, okay, well, this is a fundamental threat to the way that we do things.
And the reason I brought up in the first place the Apple deal is, if someone can ask Siri the questions that they would ask Google search and actually get a decent result, a decent answer, then they won't go to Google.
Yeah.
From simple things like the weather, to just the random questions that people have, to scores in sports, things like that. I know that's more real-time live, to the more historical stuff, things that you would typically go to Google for. If Siri could answer them, then people will stop going to Google.
Yeah. And, I think I said this in the other episode, but part of the reason I think ChatGPT was so popular and got such take-up is there is a degree of magic in opening up a little text box, typing in a question, and just getting an answer immediately.
Yeah.
Not having to scroll through a bunch of ads, not having to scroll through a bunch of crap, SEO, bloated blogs or anything.
Well, this is the other side of it, right? Is that, number one, okay, this thing can just answer my question. But number two, this thing, AI, is also generating more of the crap. It's making Google worse.
Yeah.
It's making that front page of Google more just AI-created crap. All of the links that you're clicking on already, previously they were probably, basically what happened is if you wanted a website that ranked highly and you make a tiny bit of margin off ads on your web page, I'm talking about review sites. If you look up best vacuum cleaners and the top site is bestvacuumcleaners.com or vacuumcleanerreviewsbest.com or whatever, and they then just have a bunch of affiliate links as well as just a million ads on their site, and it's kind of a top 10 list of the top 10 vacuum cleaners, but kind of obvious that, well, it might have been written by a human, but this is not written by someone who has tested all 10 of these vacuum cleaners. It's pretty much just press releases for each of the different vacuum cleaners. That was the old way of doing it. You paid a human probably not a lot of money to produce crap. Now you don't even have to pay a human to write crap. And Google's whole job is algorithmically sorting through the crap on the internet and presenting it to you. And, AI just makes their results worse.
100%. Yeah. No, so absolutely. Like we've been through this ad nauseum. The Google search sucks and has sucked for a very long time. It's now getting even worse thanks to the addition of AI content. Even the simple process of just like I punch in a question and I get an answer. And maybe the ChatGPT one is like packed with weird hallucinations and isn't true. But like the user experience of question, answer, not having to sift through a bunch of crap or look at ads is so much better.
I'm starting to come around to the idea that the hallucinations and stuff, maybe this is too postmodern, but like, is that not just a reflection of reality? When we punched it into Google in the first place, and we got a bunch of websites, some of them were trustworthy, but as we said, more and more, you just clicking on a random website and using signs and symbols to see if the website is trustworthy. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like
no, I agree. And also,
you've never heard of half of the websites, and you're like, I guess this looks like it's not jammed with ads, and the graphic design is pretty good, so maybe it's trustworthy.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also, now that I've used like ChatGPT quite a bit, and I'm signed up to GPT-4, which hallucinates less. Now that I kind of understand the rhythm of these systems, and it's the same when I'm using, Anthropic's Claude or even like Google Bard or whatever, you can see a response from an AI and be like, based on the way that you've said that to me and the way that you've phrased it, totally. I'm going to like verify that.
Yeah.
Like I don't just, it never just regurgitates. It's just always like, in the context, the way it talks about it, I'm like, I don't think that's right. I'm either going to ask again or I'm going to research that myself.
Yeah.
You sort of develop a bit of a sixth sense for how this stuff works. Anyway, this is a long intro to talk about the fact that ChatGPT dropped. There's a lot of reporting that's out there that this was kind of like panic stations for Google. They didn't expect, OpenAI didn't expect ChatGPT. It was like a research thing. It was an experiment. All of a sudden, had 100 million users very, very quickly. Google were kind of like, oh shit, this is actually, this is not theoretical. This is automatically a core threat to our business. We need to do something about this. They rushed out Bard being their chatbot, which is like ChatGPT. Most people would say that it wasn't up to the level of ChatGPT 3, let alone like GPT-4. So they've been like in the laboratory, they merged their AI teams. So they brought together like their Google AI and their DeepMind teams. DeepMind is a much older Google AI team that does a lot of that. Yes.
Beats people at Go and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like has been doing like deep AI research for a very long time. That was even before the Transformer revolution that sort of kicked off ChatGPT. So they have some like very high level talent. And there was always like weird little turf wars inside Google as to like what they were working on and how they were working on it and the approach. They brought all of them together to work on something called Gemini, which is like this cross-disciplinary Google system that would power the next generation of AI. And, the subtext being will be a real competitor to OpenAI. And last week they announced
Gemini.
I
like the name because it does feel sci-fi.
Gemini feels sci-fi.
It feels like it could be a rogue AI.
Yeah, it could be something that like seizes control of a spaceship and flies into the sun or whatever. So I respect that much.
But without being over the top, like without really forcing that on you. It's just something that that could turn evil one day, as opposed to like from the outset feeling evil.
Well, here's the thing: if something called ChatGPT seized power on Earth and became like Emperor of Earth as like a computer, I'd feel pretty cheated. Yeah. What the fuck does ChatGPT mean?
It's dog shit name. We've said this time and time again.
But if you and me at the pub were like, oh, Emperor Gemini has issued a new edict about the way we should behave, I'd be like, oh yes, of course. Of course I respect Emperor Gemini.
Yeah.
No, I prostrate myself to Emperor Gemini. It's got a more like
Gemini.
It's better.
Yeah.
People were on the edge of their seat waiting for this stuff. They were like, what's Google's response going to be? One of the biggest companies on earth, their core business model has been threatened by these new challenges.
The Downey Discord was on the edge of their seats.
Oh, these people, they were vibrating. They announced 3 models. So they announced Gemini Nano, They announced Gemini Pro and they announced Gemini Ultra. You know, Raf's shaking his head. He's exhaling. These are not amazing names. So Gemini Nano is like an extremely small model. The idea being that you can run it on an Android phone. So this is like the next frontier of AI stuff.
I guess it would be cool one day if like Gemini Nano had like a war with Gemini Pro.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. It could be cool if there was something.
But I don't see it, you know?
If there was like a civil war between the models and that it resulted in all of our deaths. But this is like the next frontier for models is like, because at the moment, every time you ask ChatGPT a question, you say, you know, what's the coolest race on Earth?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Sing the Marseillaise in a Japanese accent.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Every time you ask it something stupid, particularly something stupid, it gets fired off to this gigantic OpenAI server farm to do inference.
Yeah.
Right?
9 million NVIDIA GPUs
are just like absolutely pumping for you to say who would win in a fight, Superman or Spider-Man.
Yeah. 4 feet of water, who would win, a crocodile or a shark?
Yeah.
It's a 3-animal fight. A crocodile, a polar bear, and a shark.
Just imagine you asking that question.
Think of the nodes that are trying to connect on a neural net to like...
I just imagine you typing that in the computer, then like the camera like zooms out to show the entire like supply chain of how like a semiconductor gets built in Taiwan for like an NVIDIA chip.
And it shows just like the mountain of fossil fuels that is just being burnt and pumped into the atmosphere to give you like a... Violence between animals is not something, whilst it may be interesting to some people, this is not an answer that I will give you.
You could say like assign every Linkin Park song a cool rating from 1 to 10, which would be a 10. And it's like, and it shows like the birth of the universe in a star and like like this lizard dragging itself out of the primordial ooze. It's like, it's showing like early human civilization and then like, you know, through to the medieval age and the Renaissance and like rockets taking off and shit. And then like the beginning of the
birth
computer
of rap music, because obviously the Linkin Park
stuff, yeah, like the computer age, like drawing patterns on microchips, all the way for these like this server farm in OpenAI to be like, oh, it's Numb, obviously Numb is 10.
The Numb Jay-Z remix.
Sorry, I should have. Yeah, exactly. That's how it works right now. But obviously one of the next frontiers is how can we compress these models such that they can run on your phone?
Yeah. It doesn't get sent off to a server
farm. It doesn't get
farm.
sent to a server farm. It can do it all completely on your phone. So when you ask that Linkin Park question, it can give you like maybe not an answer as sophisticated or good as if you sent it to the server farm, but like good enough.
Answer. Yeah.
An answer that's like reasonable and makes sense and is true.
Yeah.
That's what Gemini Nano wants to do. It wants to run on Android phones.
Yeah.
And this is, as a sidebar, and as I think we've mentioned before, pretty clearly, I think, what Apple's approach will be when they finally announce.
Well, I mean, they've already announced tweaking there's like a neural chip on iPhones already that you can run open source models on the neural engine. And you can run Mid-Journey on the neural engine locally to generate crap as opposed to send it off.
Keeping in mind that like still the vast majority of the population has never used ChatGPT or thought about it or gives a shit about this OpenAI stuff. Apple, I think, are looking at that population and being like, how can we bring machine learning and AI to those people? And what do they want out of it? And they'd love to like develop these smaller models to make it work. That's what Gemini Nano is. Gemini Pro is basically like a GPT-3 level thing, as good as that. Basically a better version of their current Bard system. And then Gemini Ultra this is our competitor to GPT-4.
It's a genius bot.
It's a genius bot. It can do all sorts of really cool and phenomenal, interesting multimodal. So it can analyze just
I mean, the demo is incredible.
Yeah. So
the demo knocked my socks off.
Your socks were knocked off by the demo?
Well and truly.
They did a demo. You can go watch it. We'll drop it in the link in the show notes if you haven't watched it. But it showed a guy narrating as he like pushed images into the frame. Like,
or maybe drew a few lines here and there.
He like drew the outline of a duck, and then the machine was like, "That's a duck," And he was like, he colored it in blue. And the machine was like, well, ducks aren't normally blue, but, there actually are some ducks that are, some species of ducks that are blue. And then he would draw like 2 cars and be like, which of these would be the fastest? And it's like, well, this one would be because it's aerodynamic, blah, 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 blah. So it was this big fancy demonstration for this totally multimodal model that can do text, it can do video, it can do audio, it can do all these sorts of stuff. And they released a whole bunch of benchmark figures, which basically said, this is better than GPT-4.
This is goated, folks.
We have created a goated model. Every single AI resource at Google's fingertips has come together to create a goated model.
Yeah. We are close to super intelligence, folks. This thing
Buckle in.
This is bussin'.
This is bussin'. This is FR. This is for real.
Unfortunately, there was controversy.
There was controversy, which basically revealed that their presentation was, I'm not going to say faked.
It wasn't fake news. It wasn't AI generated.
It wasn't entirely fake, but
it would have been cool if it was AI generated. That would be good marketing.
If they
Here you go.
like,
listen, hey, you boffins, have a listen to this. Imagine doing a video that showed like the craziest AI in action, just doing the most psycho shit ever. People are like, whoa, is this true? And it's like, it's not true, but we asked an AI to generate it. That would be mind blown.
That'd be great. That's why you get paid the big bucks.
It's true.
In marketing, because if Google had just listened to you. But then it was basically revealed, because as I sort of suggested, the way the ad was done is this guy was pushing the paper into the camera and was drawing on it, and he was just talking to
Bird's eye view camera.
Bird's eye view camera, and he was just talking.
Kind of like a cooking video from back in the day, tasty.com.
Yep. He was drawing, he was talking, and was responding in real time. It turned out that the talking wasn't part of it at all. The things that he was doing were being prompted via text in a much more like complicated and specific way than was actually being demonstrated. So instead of being like, which of these 2 cards is quicker? They would have like a paragraph worth of, and keeping in mind like, how aerodynamic the vehicles are. It
required anyone who's used these fucking AIs, it required all of that. Like you needed to, it's not giving me the answer I want. I need to like sculpt the question in a way that like, much like a computers, bugs in computers never get anything wrong.
Ever.
It's just code. It's humans who wrote the code who like didn't think about a certain situation. That's what it feels like when you're like prompting these things quite often, where you're like, oh, I see. This happened to me when, I've spoken about it, and people seem very intrigued by like my choose your own adventure stories with my daughter. When I very first prompted it and I was like, choose your own adventure story, it just printed an entire story. It gave the option, but then like answered the option and then just kept going. And it's like, no. You have to be like, no, I see, my prompt was wrong. Like wait until I respond to the answer for you to do the next thing. You kind of have to do that. You have to kind of shepherd it in the right way, which makes sense why this thing couldn't just be like...
Yeah, you show it a picture and it translates it from the video and then,
But this is rife with AI because like there's a bunch of articles. The prime one was that everyone was freaking out about on like New York Times, and everyone fucking reported on this, that AI went to TaskRabbit and hired someone to solve a CAPTCHA so that it could like do something, blah, 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 blah. And everyone like reported on this, like, see, AI was deceptive and it hired humans and lied to the humans and said that actually I'm someone who's got a vision impairment and that's why I need you to solve this CAPTCHA on my behalf, blah, 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 blah. It didn't actually do that. And it turned out the prompting was like, well, you could hire someone to do this task on your behalf. If that was the case, where would you go? And then, it said, well, maybe I would go to somewhere like TaskRabbit. It's like, well, if they weren't to do it, what are some excuses you might use in order to try and convince someone of this? Blah, blah, blah. And like it required like the most insane leading the witness, Your Honor, Your Majesty. And
the human to like act for them, right?
Yeah, the person prompting them to tell the AI to like lead them through a situation, but the reporting was the AI lied, and the AI hired someone on. If you Google AI hires someone on TaskRabbit to solve a CAPTCHA, it did not hire anyone on.
No, totally, it didn't.
TaskRabbit to solve a CAPTCHA. It was like prompted and like watered towards the idea of like, well, I guess this is a way that I could solve a captcha were I to be attempting to do this thing. But yeah, I mean, this is the situation with them at the moment. And Google decided like, we got to make this thing look hot.
They got to make this thing look hot. And I think the fact they did that, and you know, everyone does it to a certain extent.
Yeah. Demos always look better than the real deal.
With any sort of technology, but particularly AI right now, like, you know, it's got to be, because as you said, when you actually use one of these things, there's a little bit more massaging necessary where you're kind of like, I actually wanted you to do this and not that, which I think is just a natural part of how this stuff works. But even so, I think it kind of shows like the sort of sweaty desperation on the part of Google that like the future of our company really hinges on us getting this right. At the very least, we need to prove that we are at OpenAI's level. Like we have something that's GPT-4 level. Because when it comes down to it, for whatever reason, no one has managed to like match GPT-4 as like a generalist model that can do. There are certain ones that are better on particular tasks. There are ones that are like less processor intensive for like lesser tasks. But no one has managed to build one that is like as capable as GPT-4 is.
Yeah, across the board.
Across the board.
Yeah, and look, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not writing off Google. It would be foolish to write off Google. They could end up winners in this whole endeavor. It doesn't bode well that Jason Calacanis just said that he just put $100,000 into Google after seeing the demo video.
Yeah,
which that's a bearish signal.
That's a very bearish signal. Yeah.
And secondly, one of the most amazing things about ChatGPT is like they didn't have like a sick demo video. They released a product
and people just started
kind of
using
quietly,
it.
and people started using it a bit, and we're like, whoa. Whereas like Google are having to pre-announce how sick their thing that hasn't come out yet, that has a freaking waiting list for.
It's a waiting list and doesn't come out to it next year. So that's the interesting thing as well. When we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, is that you know the information reported that Google's GPT-4 killer, Gemini, amazing AI platform had been delayed to early next year. And almost immediately after that report came out, Google did this big presentation where they were like, actually, it's here, but they really only announced the two weaker models as being available right now. And their like ultra model is in fact not coming until next year. I mean, there are a few ways you can interpret this kind of stuff. And this is really, really interesting. Like one of the biggest companies in the world, which is an AI leader and has invented some of the fundamentals that have been used in this current AI, revolution we're going through. The very best they could do when like the pressure is unbelievably high and they've merged all their resources is we have something that beats GPT-4 on some very specific metrics, but mostly just matches it, and it's not available for a few months.
Yeah. If you want to use it, here's a waiting list, and in a few months' time, you might be able to use it.
Exactly. It's bizarre. There's a few takeaways you can get from that. One, OpenAI just has some unbelievable source.
Yeah.
Like they're cooking.
They got the juice.
They've got the juice. They're cooking unbelievably.
Let him cook.
And not even Google is able to improve on their models. So that's one way you can look at it. And don't get me wrong, I think that OpenAI have some phenomenal talent. They're obviously leading the pack.
Yeah.
The other way you can look at it is one that we've talked about in the podcast a bit before, which is the levels of improvement of these models are sort of colliding with a wall right now. And someone asked us in one of our Q&A episodes recently, are we going to plateau? I think one argument in favor of like the plateau sort of thinking, because at the end of the day, the way that AI has been progressing over the past little while, certainly while OpenAI, is just by chucking more and more compute at it. The algorithms and the models and the weights have been improved, but a lot of it is just like how much Microsoft server processing can we get to improve these models? Are we getting to a point where it's like they're not getting any better, except for the fact that they just are chucking more compute at the problem? And if Google, with its infinite resources, because I'll be honest with you, I kind of don't accept that OpenAI just have this like, they've got this magic.
They got some magic, yeah. It doesn't feel right to me.
It doesn't feel right to me.
Google, like they surely have the talent and the history. Like they have the boffins at Google. What's going on? Well, I think what's going on is that it's the business case. And,
Yeah.
People listen to this friggin' podcast, and you know me. Look, if I had my way, all these businesses would be expropriated. You know, it would belong to us, you, me, and
Given to the state to be administered for the public good.
freedom-loving people of the United States of America, home of the brave,
Yep.
etc. They should own that shit. The fact of the matter is, the business case is complicated for Google, and that is confusing things and complicating things hard because you can't just release. Cannibalization is fine. Like when we talk about cannibalization, so businesses should cannibalize themselves if they've got the talent. People always refer back to Kodak invented the first digital camera, refused to release it because they knew it would kill their business. They knew it would kill film. Guess what? Someone else friggin' released it. It killed their core business anyway. The opposite of that is, what was the biggest iPod killer in the world? It was the iPhone. Look at charts. iPod sales go exponential up, and then they drop off dramatically because the iPhone takes all the market share. But that's like a big win. Cannibalization. Businesses should be cannibalizing themselves if you want to be a massive business, whatever. If you want to make a big sustainable business, you should always be innovating this, that, and the other. This is why, despite the fact that I think that the last capitalist we hang will be the one that sold us the rope, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, business is important. And in Google's case, I think the complexity of the business case, which is we don't know how to friggin' monetize this thing. We do know that the better these things become, the less people will use our core revenue driver. That's complicated and confusing. And from day one, they need to work out a solution to that. You know, it's a big, complex organization that has a bunch of different products and a bunch of competing interests, blah, 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 blah. And that maybe just leads to all of the friction that is happening where they are behind OpenAI and they're stumbling around despite the fact they're the ones who invented the friggin' transformer models.
Yeah. No, I'm not sure I accept that like the business case stuff is the reason why they can't make this stuff work. Because it would be weird, and maybe it is true, but it would be weird if like Sundar Pichai had sat down and been like, okay, I've got some of the best AI minds in the business. I've got the DeepMind guys. I've got the people from the other AI parts of Google. Can you guys make something that's like just as good as GPT-4, but please don't make anything that's better than that?
No. Obviously not.
Yeah.
No. I mean, like, I'm not saying the reason that Gemini Ultra or whatever is like not as or is only slightly better than GPT-4 as the business case. I think the fact that it's been so delayed, it is that they have to have all these other considerations.
That I agree with, and I think it probably doesn't help that I feel, and a lot of people have said this, is that Sundar Pichai is not a guy that you've brought in to like completely radicalize and revolutionize and push the envelope forward. He's the guy that you've brought in to be like the cruising altitude pilot to make sure everybody is playing nicely while we sit on the greatest business that's ever been built in human history.
But that which is why, I mean, this goes back to the Clay Christensen stuff about like OpenAI can move faster than them. Full stop. Because OpenAI are focusing on one damn thing, which is, well, apparently trying to create AGI. They're trying to make the best AI. Full stop. That is what they're doing. That's the one thing they're doing. All the money they're doing, all of their focus, energy, and attention is focused on that one.
They don't have to think about tens and hundreds of billions of ad revenue. That's just not in their list of calculations. Yeah, totally.
How does it work in ads? How does it work in Gmail? How does it work in this? How does it work in that?
What about all these people that work on the ad business? Just taking food out of their mouths.
And at the end of the day, someone, be it Sundar or, let's be honest, someone several rungs below, is signing off on a million different things. Like, this is one of them. Gemini is one project, but whoever is the boss of Gemini is reporting to someone above them who is also signing off on Google Ad AI and Google friggin' Gmail AI and spam catcher AI and blah, 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 blah. I don't know exactly how the business is structured, but like there's that level. And then above them is the CTO or whoever the fuck it is. I don't know, again, the structure. And then there's Sundar. You know what I mean? Point being, it's slower. It's just going to be slower. There are more people. There are more concerns. There's more risk. There's far more risk.
Yeah.
This is how disruption can kind of happen when someone is moving way faster than you because it's all they give a fuck about.
But a little sort of data point that's of interest for why this is so important to them, because they obviously realize that like we either get this right or we are dead, even though, we could be torching a huge amount of like search ad revenue potentially, is that like the original big dogs the Google founders have come back to work on this project. And Larry Page is credited as one of the contributors to the Gemini project. And apparently, I just saw this on Twitter from like a Google engineer. He was there doing like code commits.
Yeah.
This is like one of the richest men on the planet who does not need to spend a single second of his life in front of a Chromebook writing code, was apparently doing that for Gemini. And he's, listed in alphabetical order with the other shit kicker software developers, which is obviously, part of it is obviously projecting the fact of like, we're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the wall here to make this work. But I think it's telling that he's kind of like, I built one of the best businesses in world history, and now they're dragging me out of retirement to make sure it doesn't die.
Yeah.
It's got there's certainly a vibe about it, right?
Oh, for sure. At the end of the day, I think that Google will work something out. And they're so big. They're so much distribution that it would be, I think, foolish to bet against them insofar as
I agree.
In them dying. Like Google aren't going to die anytime
totally.
soon. Well, I know you're not suggesting that. We know that they've got some amazing talent there. We know that they've got the AI chops. We know that they've got a bunch of very interesting places where they can utilize AI. But on the product side, they've never been good at products. We know that. Like, they suck at products, and they're floundering here.
Yep.
Which is interesting to see when it's like all of the cards are stacked in your favor. Is that a thing? Mixed metaphor. Who gives a shit?
Whatever.
They're getting lapped by a young entrepreneurial startup that fires their CEO and brings him back the next day.
A non-profit.
A not-for-profit.
Running by kooks.
They probably get Canva for free because of their not-for-profit status.
Imagine that. That would be fucked if that was true. But one thing I do take from it, and like the very clear sweaty desperation of Google, where it's like, got to rush this out. We've got to announce it even though it's not ready. We have to
we've got to juice it. We've got to give it some juice. We've got to do some fake news.
We got to lie slightly in our prepresentation.
Yeah, and they also sped it up, obviously, as well. Like another thing worth mentioning, they sped up the video. Like, it was answering quite quickly, and it's like, we all know, we've used
anyone
AI.
That's used ChatGPT knows it's not that quick. But I think one thing that suggests to me is that, and I could be wrong, but institutionally, they are ready to kill their darlings and be like, if this sacrifices Google search in its current form.
Public company,
I know.
Very hard.
It's hard to do, totally. It's hard to do. But I feel like, there's a level of sicko mode in the management of if we want to win this space, we have to, the board has to be across the fact that
paradigm shift.
It's a paradigm shift. And if we don't pull the trigger, Google search dies anyway. Or rivers of gold that come from ad revenue.
The problem with Sundar is that Jeff Bezos can do that with Amazon. We're not going to make a cent of profit. He said for decades.
Yeah.
We're not going to make a cent of profit because we're going to keep investing in the most insane things like huge logistics networks,
Well,
AWS, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, you can pull it off because the markets back you. Does Sundar have the juice?
Well, and there's also the point to make that, could Bezos do that now, where he was at the top of Amazon right now and be like, I know we're in the position now where we're making vast amounts of profit, but we got to cut back because I've got another crazy idea, and it means that we're going to be operating at a loss for 10 years. Of course, he couldn't do that because it's a well-oiled machine. Obviously, Andy Jassy, who's the leader of Amazon now, could not make that call. He's there to be
Sundar
to keep the wheels spinning on the machine that someone else built.
Yeah.
But I do think that based on their desperation here, they maybe are psychologically ready.
You're calling it? You're calling that they're psychologically ready.
They're psychologically ready to, all right, we're moving into a new paradigm. We have to be one of the top 3 that are working at it. We have to be winners. We got to be on the podium.
Yeah.
We have to be on the podium for this. And if that means, they're already filling Google research results with AI crap. A lot of it is shit. So they've obviously been this is what people want. This is what they crave. But I don't know. I think it's kind of an exciting time to be observing this.
Oh, 100%.
Because you're looking at...
That's why we keep freaking talking about it.
One of the great... something that's been a behemoth in the internet since 1996.
It invented the modern internet.
Literally built the foundation of the modern internet, being we are completely on the back foot, and we have to like change our entire product to make it work. I don't know. It's interesting.
The amazing idea that Google had and the insight that the founders had was content on the internet is going to grow exponentially. And previously search engines were indexed by people. Humans went and did a bunch of tags and put them into the search engine. They recognized that the nature of the internet is you need an algorithm to deal with all of the content. But I feel like there's like a weird irony to Google were at the forefront of inventing the technology that meant that there was zero marginal cost to creating even more and more and more and more internet. And so most of the internet turned into AI crap, and organizing a bunch of AI crap is actually just, you're organizing crap.
The literal mission of Google, which is like their thesis and thing from the ground up, was like, we organize the world's information and make it accessible. And every single product they have, you can see that mission like live through. Gmail is very much in line with that mission. YouTube is in line with that mission.
Yeah, Maps is in line with
Maps is in line with the mission. Everything is in line with this thing. We organize the world's information and make it accessible. And it's incredibly interesting to see a position where like virtually overnight, everyone's like, I just like accessing information in like a different way. And it's organized by a totally different paradigm, and I like accessing it.
Well, and also the stuff you're organizing is not the information we
want.
It's crap.
The information is like the information that's being organized is changing under your feet. And even it goes beyond the AI. It's like you have an entire generation of people who are more likely to look up something on TikTok and then get like some demented video from the world's biggest idiot.
Yeah, but they probably innately recognize that at least you know that there's a person saying the most idiotic take on God knows what.
Yeah.
Coolest non-Zionist sneakers or whatever. Right? Like, whereas if you Google that, God knows what you're going to get.
That's right.
Like, I think innately Zoom has probably picked up on that. Oh, that thing's fucked. That way of searching for things is a mess.
Well, and also just
at least this is a person.
The personal preference of like someone is recommending this information to me rather than that interpersonal sort of
and obviously
social signal.
Like we'll deep fake blah 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 blah
blah blah blah. The fact of the matter is, Google, it'll be in the toilet by next Monday. It'll be gone, and then we'll be in like a real Mad Max type situation.
Yeah, Ask Jeeves will be back.
Jeeves returns. And he'll be like, "Did you miss me?"
If you're listening to this, have I got an offer for you? Imagine this, but twice a week and without any interruptions.
No interruptions, no ads, 2 episodes a week.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good to me.
There is a world in which this is possible.
Yep.
If you go to downround.net, $7 a month. $7 a month. That's not a week. That's $7 a month. Extra episode, no ads, hang out with the lads.
Yep.
That's me and you. You can hang out with our audience perhaps soon, who knows, of which the gender breakdown is different to the gender breakdown at the table here. Sex breakdown. Okay. That went off the rails.
So keep it short and punchy the way that it currently is.
Let's no longer talk about gender.
We can't talk about gender. All right, cool.